On August 29th, Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau were struck by an alleged drunk driver in New Jersey. We at Up in the Blue Seats wanted to extend our condolences to the Gaudreau family, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Calgary Flames for their loss. We would like to dedicate this season to the incredible career of Johnny Hockey, but more importantly, to the incredible person he was. Thank you for listening, and please, don't drink and drive. Call a ride. We are back. Up in the Blue
We're
Seats
so back.
is back, and we've got upgraded. I mean, have you guys ever seen me in this high of quality before? I don't think I have. You guys are looking a little grainy, if I'm saying. No,
I
we're
look like I feel
like
I'm
you
at
look.
a 9-year-old hockey tournament.
No, this is a really great sign, obviously. Wouldn't be possible with all of you listeners. So thank you guys so much. So excited for another season with these two guys right here. Last season was a lot of fun for a lot of reasons. And we hope the same for this season. So let's get into it, guys. How are your summers to begin with? Huh? Anything fun?
Well, I'm in the middle of actually on the last day of a move, so that has like dominated um, the summer kind of. So it was a good summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Brian?
Uh, I was so excited when the kids got to go back to school. Uh, I'll leave, I'll leave it at that. It was a good summer. Not a whole lot of golfing,
Oh,
a whole lot of diapers. But it was fun. We're at the rink, not too much, but um, it was interesting. There was a lot of different things around the league that were interesting that we could
mm-hmm.
follow along with. But as far as it wasn't quite the summer of Bry. It's a summer of just putting out fires everywhere. But it was good. Everybody's doing good.
Sounds good.
Mollie
Sounds good.
Walker, Mollie Walker, what was your highlight of the summer?
Oh, I think everybody listening knows going to see Taylor Swift in London was probably top three moment of my life, and it wasn't two or three. So it was a good summer and first time in Europe too. So that was very special, very
Yeah.
very special.
Surprised you came back.
I know. I almost didn't, honestly, and I'm a New Yorker nowhere person, but all right, let's get into some Rangers. All right. We apologize, we're a little late, obviously, but we needed to get all these new fancy upgrades. So we're gonna breeze over a little bit of the off season and kind of go right into training camp with what we've been seeing. Larry and I have been there mostly every day, so I'll turn to Larry first. Just kind of what's been the vibe of training camp that you've gotten just to start getting into things.
I think this is it's been an interesting training camp because the varsity skated together from the first day.
Mm-hmm.
There were no, there were only a couple of guys from outside the organization who are on this team right now. Sam Carrick, Riley Smith. Otherwise, everyone is from within the organization. It's essentially the same team. Every year is different. Every team is different, but this almost seems like more of a continuation than it is a new start.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a quiet confidence. I haven't really talked to too many guys about what they expect or what are they going to say, but just feeling the room, I think this is a very confident team. I think they're going to go about their business one step at a time, but I think they all understand there's only one acceptable result. And it puts a burden on them, but it also is, I think, a responsibility for them. And again, I don't think this is about 1994. I don't think this is about 1940. I think this is about the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
They have gotten to 10 wins in the playoffs in 2022. They got to 10 wins in the playoffs last year. They need to find 6 more. And I'll tell you what, maybe because this is what I've wanted to hear from Peter Laviolette all training camp, actually all last season too. But when he said yesterday that he wanted to get players in the game more, and he was talking about Will Cooley on the penalty kill. He was talking about Lafreniere and Offman maybe having a chance. That's to me, that was the most significant sentence of the preseason, because I don't think it's just a sentence. I think it's a shift in philosophy. I think they're going to give their guys. I think they're going to give their young guys an opportunity to build and build and build, so that they have their best chance going into the playoffs. I think they need to add more physicality. I assume they will do that at the trade deadline in some shape or form. But I like this team a lot.
Do you think year two? So training camps are always difficult. There's just some anxiety as a player, and I'll go back to like Torch's training camp. It never got the physicality of it never got easier, but you knew what to expect and you almost conditioned yourself to. Which could that be like? Okay, we know this worked last year because it got us to all these points and a great regular season finish. Could that potentially lead to maybe a slow start? Because remember last year and just the culture shift that Laviolette brought. Mm-hmm. You think, and you guys are there every day. I mean, I guess I'm asking is, are they know what to expect? Does that mean they're comfortable, or are they more?
You know what's interesting? You know what's interesting? I actually talked to a couple of guys about that, and I talked to Kreider, talked to Trocheck, and they both were talking about how the staff has made it fresh. Yeah, they understand the system, so they're ahead in that sense. But they're talking about how the assistant coaches always come up with new drills.
Yeah,
there's always something new. That when you go to practice, it's not every day is not the same.
Capo told me that last season.
Yeah, so I think the coaching staff is probably aware of that, and it's been like they like the first or second day, they were competing in their drills like it was last March. Mm-hmm. It was, and these guys, I don't know when it shifted. Actually, you can talk to this, Brian. When did it shift from guys using training camp to get in shape and get ready to the point where guys are ready to go on day one? They're conditioned. They are ready. They work all summer now. So in your career, can you pinpoint a time where that might have shifted?
Yeah, I went to my first training camp trying to be big and strong, but I had played into the conference finals of the American League after my college season. And I skated a lot. So I was kind of nervous going into my first camp that I wasn't big and strong enough. My second camp, when I came in and worked really hard in the gym all summer, was probably my worst camp ever because I didn't skate enough. And then that's when I realized everybody skates more. And then every year I think guys skate more and more in the summer. So I don't really remember guys not being fit. If a guy wasn't fit, you saw like 3 or 4 my first few years in 07, 08, 09. Then you saw a couple more towards training camp, guys who weren't really ready for that sort of volume. But then after that, I mean, if you couldn't get through the rigors of a training camp practice and the conditioning stage, I mean, everybody was looking at you like, you don't even want to be here. So, I mean, for the most part, 80% to 100% of guys were very, very fit going into camp. The funny thing to me was there were guys that had body fat tests the first day, and they were like, thank goodness, because I'm just going to go up during the season. I never understood how guys got fatter during the season.
Yeah.
And by fatter, I mean like
just heavier.
Still very well conditioned athletes.
Just
a little softer. I was lost.
No, but you're right, Brian. It's been really interesting how, Peter Laviolette has dished out a lot of compliments about how in shape a lot of the prospect guys are. Guys who are trying to make the roster out of training camp for the first time. Adam Edstrom, Matt Rempe. And that's been such a unique part of this training camp, I think, back to Larry's point about how there's not a lot to ask the veteran guys. it's the same. It's relatively the same thing, the same goal. It does feel like we're picking up from last season. It doesn't feel different at all, really. So it's kind of given not only the coaching staff and the organization, but also us as writers who are covering it, more of an opportunity to talk to and write about and for them evaluate the younger players in the organization who are now starting to come up and inch a little closer. Victor Mancini came out of absolutely nowhere, it feels like, and he's skating with Adam Fox during main group practice in training camp. Adam Edstrom, now that we've got 2 injuries, Jimmy Vesey and Ryan Lindgren, they're going to be out week to week. So there's now holes in the lineup that was pretty set in stone almost. There was maybe 1 or 2 spots up for grabs. And now there's 2 new holes that need to be filled. So there's opportunities for younger players to come in. And it doesn't seem like it's going to be that long of injuries. So I think it's an opportunity for the Rangers to really get a look maybe at Brennan Othmann, Victor Mancini, Adam Edstrom, these guys that maybe wouldn't have made it out of training camp, that are now going to get a really big opportunity to cement themselves and present themselves as an option later in the season when other injuries occur, because their injury luck really seems like it's run out a little bit here. But I think the player I kind of want to start with is Adam Edstrom. For some reason, and Larry can attest to this, I feel like he came into camp in such great shape, and he fades to the background next to a guy like Matt Rempe because he's just been so in the spotlight. But I almost feel like it's worked to his advantage, and now he's really come in and presented himself as an option for them, I think, down the line here.
Well, I thought Edstrom, the Edstrom Rempe set of winger, the bookends.
Yeah.
I thought they were very effective in their half dozen games together last year. So this is the 4th line that I think and again, going off of what the coach said on Thursday, it seems like they're all going to be a little bit more involved. And if this line, which is going to be centered by Sam Carrick, an edgy veteran
snarl
player. Yeah, he plays with snarl. He is. I think he probably doesn't rise to the level of Barclay Goodrow, but he's a similar kind of player. I mean, Barclay Goodrow,
for $2.6 million less,
was as mean a player as the Rangers had. I mean, there were some times, away from the puck when you would, so Carrick is going to play with an edge. Their 2 big guys on the wings are creating chaos. And if this line can get 7, 8, 9 minutes of even strength time, they will build and build and build. And I like that. I like that combination a lot.
A big picture, looking at what happened last year, there was a lot to be happy about. Ultimately, what I thought was, it's hard to get to the inside of the ice offensively, and it's hard to keep people out, very good teams out of the middle of the rink in the D zone. And the teams that can do that the best, impose their will the most, advance in the playoffs. And we know there's star power on this team. There's a lot of talent. But when I look at the Rangers' big picture, and you're going to get 120 points again from Pairings, hopefully Lafreniere takes a step again, which I think he will. But that line was so amazing last year, to the point where, I mean, all good players, but did you expect Trocheck line to do what they did? If you say day 1 of camp, this Trocheck line is going to be a driver among them to the point that they were at.
It wasn't even the Trocheck line.
Yeah,
right?
It was Chytil, right? So
it was the Chytil line.
They had some found money in different places.
Yeah,
right? They had some found money. What's going to get them over the edge? And to your guys' point, if that line has a real identity, or even a Mancini who's really intriguing to me, he's almost 230 pounds. You had Trouba was a physical player. Obviously, Lindgren plays as hard as he possibly can, to the point where he gets dinged up sometimes. You get this big man coming in who's 22 years old, I think. Yeah, I'm intrigued. I want to give him reps from Peter Laviolette. I want to see this kid take someone's job because that adds an element that we didn't have. That maybe one of the reasons why we fell short last year.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's opportunities have been created, and to Larry's point, I do think that Peter Laviolette is taking his time, and he said verbatim that he wants to keep guys involved, and I think that's, to Larry's point, I do think that that could be an opportunity for this team to grow, and to your point, Brian, get over that Eastern Conference final hump. Maybe it is one of the kids, but I think something that we've all been talking about nonstop, and this is looking ahead, really ahead, but trade deadline, considering the fact that they came in with the same team minus Barclay Gaudreau, adding Sam Carrick and Riley Smith, it's the same. So I think fans should be excited because if you look at what their body of work was last season, and so long as Peter Laviolette's work ethic message is still resonating in that locker room, which everything that we've seen up until this point indicates that it still is loud and true, I think that people should be excited for this season for sure.
Yeah, I don't expect them to finish with the best record in the league. I don't think they're going to win the President's Trophy, but I don't, that's not the objective. It's just not. They have to find 6 more wins in the playoffs. That's what they need to do. That's what the season has to be about. You have to build the season so that at the deadline, you are maybe a piece away, and you find those, and you have to find those 6 extra ones. So that's it to me. Brian, to your point, I don't expect them to be 15-4-1 after 20 games, but I don't think that matters because I think you're going to measure this team by the progress of their younger players, the progress of the guys who are going to be given a chance to fill larger roles. I also think that there's an expectation that Igor Shesterkin is going to have a better year than he did last year. Remember, I mean, through the All-Star game, there were questions about, well, should Jonathan Quick be the #1 goalie? Honestly,
I know we talked about it right here on this platform.
Yeah, no, there was all discussion, and Shesterkin, actually, for 2 consecutive years, his regular seasons have been okay, and the first halves have been just average. So I expect Shesterkin to have a much better season, a much better regular season this year, more consistency, fewer marginal goals. So I think that's an area. I also think if Adam Fox is healthy, stays healthy all year, he will be the best version of himself. Where last year he was injured and he really was catching up all year, and when he caught up, he got hurt again in the Washington
injury,
right? And so they didn't have a healthy Adam Fox there, and still he was on the second All-Star team, right?
Yeah.
So
I'll add another player to that list, Philip Chytil. Mm-hmm. A full healthy season of Philip Chytil could be instrumental for the Rangers as well if they have a scoring third line center or somebody who can drive that third line with presumably Capo Caco and Will Cooley is probably what it's going to look like, almost a new rendition of the kid line, if you will. Lexi Lafreniere has graduated. But I think that could also be a huge factor for them as well. And I think that they also just want to see Philip Chytil be able to get through a full 82-game season as well. And already in the preseason, everybody was holding their breath when he went down in that Islander game. And the fact that he came back out was awesome, and we talked to him afterward, and he was fine. But you hold your breath a little bit when he's out there for both his head and just he's proven to be a bit of a fragile player sometimes. So it's a little dicey, but it could be huge for them if he is able to put together a really great season.
And Laviolette has made a point of praising that line.
Yeah.
He has talked to, that line is good. That line has played well. Yeah, and there's I think, a real affection within the organization for Philip Chytil.
Mm-hmm.
The way the way they brought him back to get into the playoffs, they essentially said, we don't think we can win the Stanley Cup without Philip Chytil, and so we're putting him in now, even though we know he's 30%. I don't know that worked. I question it,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it gave Chytil a runway into this season,
Definitely.
or I feel he probably went into the summer feeling a lot better about himself and his future.
He said he was
Than
on the ice
what?
5 days after the season ended because he had not been skating for 5 months. So after the few games that he picked up in the playoffs, he left the season and was like, I'm still ready to go. So that's an encouraging sign. He's been training since 5 days after the Rangers season ended. So, and he has been working toward this season the entire time. He sounds good. He sounds confident, but obviously you never know. But I think he could be a big factor for them.
Well, I've said
Uh,
often, over and over, actually, that I would rather have them have a physical third line center, a checking oriented physical center who can relieve some of the responsibility of Zibanejad in the playoffs when he has to go shift after shift after shift against more physical, bigger players. I think that he just, I think he grinds down for through no
yeah,
fault of his own. He's being asked to do things that is a little bit out of his wheelhouse. And so I would rather the Rangers have I would rather the Rangers have Brian Boyle, and as their well, no, fourth line left winger.
well, they signed a guy, but it was making too much, so they had to ship him back to San Jose. But
But
I think what Mika can
but
do, Mika can do it defensively.
listen,
That's in
this is
his
where
wheelhouse. But
this is where we
he
are with Chytil, and and it could be an explosive third line if he stays healthy and is on his game.
that's the way I would look at it too. I think like with Mika, he he is solid in his own end. I think he did a great job of that last year. Everyone was like, well, where are the even strength goals? And that's what maybe that's what you're getting at, Larry, because you did lose a little bit of that. The 5-on-5, they weren't quite dominating like we've seen Mika do in the past. Like
It was
the
production
shortened
too.
season. Yeah, he scored every game, it seemed like, in that shortened season. And,
Yeah,
where are those goals coming from? So if you get somebody to lighten that load, I look at it a little bit like, all right, you want to go head to head with top lines and maybe Mika gets grinded down a little bit. The matchup nightmare that if this third line can be dynamic for other teams, and then you throw out a fourth line with twin tower, like these big boys just flying around, causing all these different. I mean, I get excited about it. If I'm Peter Laviolette, I get excited about it. These guys are. There's so many different ways you can throw out lines, and then if you can really trust that fourth line, like we started with talking about, you can have matchup nightmares everywhere. It doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
you play at home on the road or on the moon. They can, like the other coach is going to have to be scheming constantly.
That
So this
fourth line
glass
is
half
so
full,
fun.
right now. So glass
yeah,
half glass half empty. It's kind of like, all right, we're going to look across the river. I think they're going to be better. I
Yes,
think the Devils are going to be a problem. I
definitely.
think that there's other teams that are coming to them. I think they've played a lot of hockey in the last few years. I don't think the guys that they've counted on are getting younger. You hope that they're driven and can have a good start. And then with Igor, maybe he's laughing at all of us because you start this by saying we need 6 more wins in the playoffs, and his regular season is sort of ordinary, and then he comes out and he's electric in the playoffs. And he's kind of like, well, I'm doing what I have to do to get us through here.
sure.
I just it's you get 82 games. If you Peter Laviolette, you get 82 games to see what's what, and then you go and attack it in the playoffs.
Well,
I
you
think
know
if you
what?
get to the Cup final, that's obviously you want to win it at that point, but that's where their eyes should be right now in the Eastern Conference right now. with their experience and their depth, they have to get to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah. And it's also it's not quite you see what you have after 82 games. You kind of see what you have after 65 games or whatever, whatever number of games they will play at the deadline, because the deadline is a game changer. It just is, and I think virtually every team in the league, or every team that believes it's a contender, looks at the deadline. Okay, let's see what we need at the deadline. Let's see what we need at the deadline. And so I think you have not 82 games, but kind of like 60 to solidify your team, and then you decide, do we need a left defenseman? Do we need a right defenseman? Do we need a third line center? So with injuries, you don't know. But again, I think they are going to give an opportunity to the young guys to grow. And I think that's for me the best message out of this training camp.
Going back to the first line, Mika Zibanejad, and trade deadline questions, is Riley Smith right wing candidate number one? Is that going to be a season-long solution, or are they going to end up trying to get somebody else at the deadline as well, like they have the last 2 or 3, I think, at this point?
I like Riley Smith as a player. I think he's a smart enough player to, and the opportunity for him.
That's what I've heard. He's smart.
They
like the way he thinks the game, and they think that will complement Chris and Mika.
Yeah, and I think he's had a lot of success in the league. I don't think last year was, he's got to prove something. This is, third team in 3 years, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. He's a proud guy too, but he's a very good player, a smart player. So that's something that can be, I don't know. I think you have the speed up and down the wing and physicality of Kreider. Mika can kind of do both. Can play it fast when he's at his best. I think he's penetrating in the middle of the ice. And you have a real cerebral, high IQ sort of player that hopefully can complement him.
Yeah, and I will say, just looking at his numbers from last season, he was with Pittsburgh last season, and in talking to him, didn't really sound like he was very thrilled with his role, and he felt like it was pretty limited. He's a big PK guy. That's a huge part of his game, which he no doubt will be involved with on the Rangers front. And I looked at it from when he was with the Golden Knights to when he was with Pittsburgh, his penalty kill time was sliced in half. So I think that that's a really big part of his game, and that's something that the Rangers are definitely going to give him in terms of his responsibilities. And I think that could really help. Yeah.
Be careful with that, though, because if he's on that top line, you have Mika and Chris killing together. You want to have him as a killer as well. I'm just thinking, as I put my coach hat on here, when they have to go back out as a line together, are all three of them rested? You know what I mean? Sort of, and you can do that if they go first and he goes second, but you got Troch in there, and who knows? But
well, you know what they did? You know what they did a lot last year. Last year, a lot of times, Panarin would get the shift with Mika and Kreider when at the end of the penalty kill. So he would. That's how that gave Panarin an extra shift or two each period, and maybe they'll do that again, or maybe they won't. But they were always aware of the rotation on the penalty kill.
Yeah, and the other argument or side note to that line is, if it doesn't work out, how long is Peter Laviolette going to ride with that Kreider-Zibanejad, de facto pairing, because it was together the entire last season, except for one game that Mika was out for. But it's hard because of the way that the lineup is aligned. Like it just feels so, especially with that Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere line is that's staying intact so long as it continues to be as dominant as it has. But if you're not getting the same as much production as you need from that top line, how long is Peter Laviolette going to wait before he changes things up? Because we did not see a lot of movement in the lineup at all, despite having as many injuries as they did last season. He did pretty much try to keep it intact. And just from his comments, Larry, I don't know if you agree, but he sounded pretty almost proud of that, almost like that was an intentional thing whenever he's spoken about it, how there was very little movement in the lineup.
Well, I thought their stability was one of their strengths. And that's, actually what I alluded to when, through no fault of his own, but when Phil came back in the playoffs and then he couldn't play the next game and then he came back, the lineup was changing every day.
It disrupted.
And, and listen, I understand the playoffs, there are, you can't win without, 28 players. But the stability had been like a hallmark of the team. They barely changed lines after the trade deadline. They got Wenberg. He was their third line center. They got Roslovic. They put him up with Kreider and Zibanejad, and they just rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled. And then in the middle of the Carolina series, it changed. Like the lineup was changing every day, and part of it was because Laviolette didn't necessarily trust Rempe to play on the road, and so Johnny Brodzinski would come in. But then, Blake Wheeler suddenly was back in a game, and I think they're, I think they lost something with that. I get it. You have to make moves, but I think stability was one of their greatest assets, and I think he wants to go into this season with these lines, and he doesn't want to change them. I mean, but, if they have to change, if I don't see them moving off Riley Smith anytime soon. I think that's what they want. So I don't see it like, last year after, Kakko started the season. And after 11 games, it switched. I don't think I don't think there's going to be a repeat with Riley Smith. I think Riley Smith's going to be there until until he's until there is a specific reason for him not to be there.
I think he has more information too. He knows a little bit more about Peter Laviolette knows more about what he has from last year, what might work, what might not with Kaapo Kakko, and again, he's intriguing. Can he take a step? But he knows more now, so that's why let's not try this guy on the first time. No, we're going to start. I think he's going to start Kakko off with where he is and not expect too much from him and let him get comfortable and be a contributor. And then you have the veteran guy that, okay, you didn't like the role last year, as Mollie said. Here's a chance to on the top line from New York Rangers. Yeah. I think he'll handle it well. And if not, we can talk about Frank Toronto coming back at the deadline. That's always fun.
Well, let's stick with Peter Laviolette. Peter Laviolette in year 2, I guess. Larry, thoughts?
My thoughts will. I'm going to write about this next week. So
you don't want to give anybody a teaser?
Let me write about this.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, I think history has shown Peter Laviolette takes a dip from year 1 to year 2, and for whatever reason that may be. And honestly, I think it's more so about how well he does in year 1, which I think is more of a positive than it is a negative, because I think I think he comes in and he immediately earns the respect of the guys in the room. They buy into his message. We saw it with the Rangers last season. They lived and breathed everything that he says, and something that I find so interesting, especially with a guy like Matt Rempe, a rookie who's trying to make it out of training camp for the first time, very much so likely that he will. And when Rempe talks, you can hear Peter Laviolette in what he says sometimes, and other players too. Rempe's not the only one, but I think that's a testament to how much the players believe in him and believe in what he says, and how much Peter Laviolette believes in what he says too, which I think is an admirable quality of his. But it's always interesting to think about how that work ethic message that he's become known for resonates from year one to year two, because year one, you know, it's new, but how soon does that kind of message wear off? But I mean, this is obviously just getting ahead of ourselves, but I was just curious your guys' thoughts on that, Brian, especially you being a former player.
Yeah, he's a guy that really believes and makes you feel like he really believes in you as a player and his guy. So it's not surprising to me for a number of reasons. I mean, contractually with all their players and how their salary cap structure is all situated, there wasn't going to be a lot of turnover, and they
Right.
won the President's Trophy, made the contract. But he gets all in, and he makes you believe that he believes in you.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a great thing for a coach to have as a player. You don't want to let him down. And we talked about last year leading into the season and during the season that the players felt it was on them, right, Larry? You said that several times, I think, and it's up to them ultimately how they do. He's going to guide them and empower them with his belief in them. It's up to him to, you know, obviously use them, utilize them, and play them in certain roles in certain minutes. But I just think he's a loyal guy, and that's a great thing as a player to know the guy behind you standing there is going to fight as hard as he can for your own personal success and for the team also.
All right, let's go back to the D pairs, because it looks like it's going to be a different look than what we expected with Ryan Lindgren being out. But I think that they're going to take it one of two ways. I feel like they're either going to set it up as if Ryan Lindgren is coming back in one or two games, and they can plug maybe a Victor Mancini or Ruidal, maybe Connor Mackey in that spot next to Adam Fox, and then keep the rest of the D pair as what they originally wanted it to be. Or it looks like they might start with Keandre Miller and Adam Fox up there. But the one thing that we do know about these D pairs is Zach Jones officially will be the sixth defenseman in the Rangers lineup come opening night. That seems to be a lock there, right, guys?
Oh yeah, he's in. There's no question. It's interesting. Lindgren hasn't skated, so, and the Rangers are not, you know, unique in this. There's no information coming out about his injury. Last week I actually I asked Laviolette whether it was possible that this was going to be an LTI situation where he would have to miss 10 games. And, you know, Peter just, you know, said, well, you know, he's week to week. That's what he is. He's week to week. So I tried to corner him, and, he eluded my, attempted, forecheck, pretty, he just broke out of the zone.
He stiff-armed you.
Without taking a second thought, but I'm not sure. So, they know. And I think if they go Miller Fox, I think that, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's just, my brain, but I would think that would indicate maybe there's going to be a longer absence for Lindgren.
Yeah.
And the way they're set up, the way they set up yesterday, and the way they're going to set up against the Islanders in the final exhibition game, they're going to have Miller and Fox. They're going to have Jones and Trouba, and they had Matt Robertson skating with Braden Schneider. And look, I wrote about Robertson, I think, on the first or second day of camp. He seems to me to be a much more mature person. He talked about how over the summer he focused on the mental side of the game. He he worked with mental coaches, and he seems a lot more prepared. Unfortunately, he got injured in the first exhibition game, so this is his next one, but he's still here. And I think he has a chance to grab that spot while Lindgren is out. And I think that's kind of what they would like. I don't think they're going to start the season with Mancini playing in the top six. I think he needs to go back. And one of the reasons is he would have to play on the left. It's hard enough for a righty to make the move, but at what is he, 21?
They've given him a serious look, though.
Right. It's interesting, but then, yeah, I mean, he earned it.
Of
He
course.
earned it. So I think if there was a right D spot open, they might go with him. They might. Although, again, he is so young.
Yeah,
he is so young. There's nothing wrong with him playing in Hartford for having Ryan McDonough didn't they? Ryan McDonough went to Hartford his first season. It was incredible. Ryan McDonough needed a half a year of the American Hockey League. And so, I think Mancini needs to go down in Hartford and play, and then he will be a viable option for them, which is very exciting. Because they have their core on D, but the next guys are a little bit away. EJ Emery he's a freshman. He's a little bit away. Drew Fortescue is a sophomore. He's a little bit away. So if they could have this option, mid-season, say, it's an element that they haven't had in a while. You know what? It's kind of, and I don't want to compare him to Braden Schneider, but it was like Braden Schneider came up in the middle of the season, and he has been a fixture from game one. I was actually on the trip. He
in San Jose, right?
Is San Jose, and went into the lineup, and he's like been out. I think he was scratched once at the end of that year. He's been in the lineup every day. So I'm not saying that Mancini is Schneider. I mean, Braden Schneider is a first-round draft pick, big pedigree, but that's the kind of player who the Rangers might have in Mancini.
Very intriguing to me, the depth that they have on D right now, organizationally. I love what they've done. They have a Jones, who's exciting to kind of think about what he might be. They have Schneider, who I think, again, the sky's the limit for. And they have pieces that are coming up that are going to play in Hartford it's just, that's what you need. You can't just be all in with your varsity club and have nothing that could potentially come up. But with Mancini, I don't know, it's almost like because he's not a first round pick, but it's like a starting quarterback. Do you want to start him off in a bad situation? Is it a bad situation to put him on his offside? Giving him too much, is it fair to the kid, sort of, is what I'm asking. And I think to what Larry was saying, it's not necessarily that fair to him. Let him go and be a big part of the pro team. The American Hockey League's not easy, and do well there. He's got a little taste of it. Last year he had some games and playoff games, right? You let him go and run with it. Well, you don't have to. You can be a little bit more patient because of what they have up front. On the big team on the decor. So that's just, it's a good problem to have, I guess I'd say, in terms of what they have depth-wise defensively. And, kudos to Chris Jordan, because that's in the scouting staff. That's what that is, paying attention, what the needs are and what the needs might be in the future.
I agree. Alrighty, well, that was an awesome season preview episode of Up in the Blue Seats. Thank you guys so much for joining me into our beautiful studio that we're going to get to use this season. Thank you to Emma Kate Austin and Ryan Sampson for producing the show. If you guys enjoyed it, you can give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Drop your comment. What are your predictions for the Rangers season? We would love to hear from you. So thank you so much, and we'll see you guys soon.